यो यो हला हला। नमस्ते 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 नमस्ते। जो सबसे पहला है वो डंकी है। जो सबसे पहला है वो नंबर 1 का डंकी है भाई। उससे बड़ा डंकी कोई है ही नहीं भाई। जो सबसे पहले है वो डब्ल्यू भाई। डब्ल्यू डब्ल्यू भाई डंकी जी वेलकम। जो सबसे पहले आने वाला था वो डंकी होने वाला था। अमेजिंग अमेजिंग। बहुत अच्छा किया तूने। बहुत अच्छा किया भाई तूने। तू सबसे पहला आया क्योंकि तू है ही सच में गधा। तो तूने खुद ही अपने आप को दे दिया है गधा। तो मुझे बोलने की भी जरूरत नहीं है। तू खुद ही सेल्फ विंडिक्टिव काम कर दिया। नहीं कॉफी ला भाई सेल्फ विंडिक्टिव। आइए आइए जी आइए। आइए जी आइए आइए जी आइए। बढ़िया सा बढ़िया आवाज़ सुनाओ एक। बहुत बढ़िया आवाज़। बहुत बढ़िया आवाज़ सुनाते हैं एक। ये जनरेशनल आवाज़ है। दिस इज़ अ वेरी जनरेशनल आवाज़ भाई। टाइमलेस। अमेजिंग अमेजिंग। एक और जनरेशनल आवाज़ सुन लेते हैं। एक और जनरेशनल आवाज़ सुन लेते हैं। कैसे हो फैमिली वाड़ी जी? कैसे हो? नंबर 2 डोंकी। यहाँ सबको नंबर दिया जाएगा डोंकी का। कॉफ़ी का नंबर 1 डोंकी। फैमिली वाइटी नंबर 2 डोंकी। अगर तुम्हारे पास आईक्यू है थोड़ा अच्छा 100 से ऊपर का तो तुम इसका पैटर्न बताओ मुझे। ये नंबर 1 कॉफ़ी गाय का कैसे आया नंबर 1 डोंकी? और ये फैमिली वाइटी का नंबर 2 डोंकी कैसे आया? अगर तुम्हारे पास 100 से ज़्यादा आईक्यू है तो तुम ये समझ पाओगे। इस पैटर्न को समझ पाओगे। तुम क्रैक कर पाओगे। गार्ड है भाई तुम्हारे पास इतना अच्छा आईक्यू? हम्म। कैसे आया ये पैटर्न? कैसे आया? नंबर 3 डोंकी केविन है। जो सबसे पहला है उसका नंबर 1 डोंकी। जो सेकंड आया उसका नंबर 2 डोंकी। तो फिर केविन का कौन सा केविन कौन से नंबर का डोंकी है भाई? नंबर 3। भूतिया स्ट्रीम है आज। भूतिया स्ट्रीम है। भूतिया स्ट्रीम है। वाह यार यार आप सो फकिंग स्मार्ट। यार आप सो फकिंग स्मार्ट भाई। तुम तो बड़े होके तगड़े ऑफिसर ऑफिसर बनने वाले हो यार। यू डोंकी आई एम लायन। अबे मैं हूँ यहाँ का राजा। यहाँ का राजा मैं हूँ। तू डोंकी है तो तू डोंकी है। व्हाट द फक। हर कोई डोंकी यही कहता है कि मैं शेर हूँ भाई। अब तो तू पक्का डोंकी है भाई। कोई शेर ऐसा नहीं बोलता कि भैंचोद मैं शेर हूँ। वो बस होता है। लेकिन तुझे बोलना पड़ रहा है तो बात डोंकी है भाई। कम ऑन प्रोजेक्ट कर रहा है तू मेरे पे यू डोंकी। है ना भाई? क्रेजी। लायन तो जंगल में रहता भी नहीं है। लायन जंगल में रहता है। रहता है जंगल में लायन? किसने बोला लायन जंगल में नहीं रहता? व्हाट द फक। रहता है जंगल में लायन? ये क्या बात हुई? जंगल का ही तो राजा होता है। तूने वो नहीं देखी क्या? लायन किंग नहीं देखी क्या? प्लेन्स में रहता है। अबे पागल तो प्लेन्स भी जंगल होते हैं। ज़रूरी थोड़ा ना जंगल भैंचोद एकदम अमेजोन भैंचोद साहब। अमेजोन एकदम भैंचोद कौन से टाइप का फॉरेस्ट होता है? एवरग्रीन फॉरेस्ट। टाइगर होता है जंगल में। अरे तो भाई ज़रूरी थोड़ा ना सारे जंगल में भैंचोद पेड़ ही पेड़ भरे पड़े हों। प्लेन्स में भी होते हैं जंगल। ऐसी बात नहीं है भाई। जंगल का राजा होता है भाई शेर। लेकिन मुझे टाइगर ज़्यादा पसंद है। टाइगर फक विद टाइगर मोर भाई। टाइगर को टाइगर टाइगर पता नहीं भाई। चूज करना भाई लायन और टाइगर। लायन और टाइगर देखें भाई तुम्हारा क्या ठीक है। लायन और टाइगर। लाइगर अरे नहीं लाइगर नहीं यार। लायन और टाइगर। अब तुम्हारा पर्सनालिटी के बारे में पता चल जाएगा। टाइगर ओके ओके। लायन ओके। लायन ओके भाई ओके। टाइगर थोड़ा लो की राजा होता है। टाइगर क्लेम नहीं करता फालतू में, लेकिन लायन भी तगड़ा होता है। लायन भी तगड़ा होता है, ऐसी बात नहीं है, लायन भी तगड़ा होता है। हाँ, टाइगर को, टाइगर होता है भैंचो असासन टाइप होता है टाइगर। लायन होता है भैंचो उसे राजा बनने का शौक चढ़ा ही रहता है, लेकिन वो राजा होता भी वही है। तो भाई लायन भी होता है तगड़ा। टाइगर रोमांटिक होता है, टाइगर थोड़ा असासन टाइप होता है यार, हरामजादा बहुत तगड़ा असासन है। टाइगर इज़ अ वेरी डेंजरस एनिमल भाई। हमारी एक इंग्लिश की बुक में होता था पूरा चैप्टर भाई, एक स्टोरी थी उसमें भाई, एक टाइगर था और वो टाइगर सबको खा जाता था। फिर एक ब्रिटिशर आदमी आया और उसने उस टाइगर को मार दिया। पता नहीं कौन सी भैंचोद बुक में, कौन सी इंग्लिश कौन सी क्लास में थी ये स्टोरी। पेंगुइन बाय द वे क्या बात चल रही, टाइगर और लायन में से चूज कर रहे हैं यार हम, कि टाइगर और लायन। हम तो जंगल के चिंक पोकली हैं। चिंच पोकली क्या होता है? फक इज चिंच पोकली? चिंच पोकली बंदर। हाय अंक, कैसे हो? अलेक्सा भाई कैसे हो? लायन और टाइगर, चूज वन, लायन और टाइगर। रोहन कैरियप्पा ना, रोहन कैरियप्पा देखते हैं भाई जी, रोहन कैरियप्पा के क्या व्यूज़ हैं आपके बारे में। टाइगर, ओके बार दो टाइगर दो लायन हो चुके हैं। कीजिए भाई आप बताओ टाइगर या टाइगर गैंग ज़्यादा है यार यहाँ पे हैं। टाइगर स्कूल, मैं तो जैगवार हूँ, लेकिन दो ऑप्शन हैं हरदमान भाई जी, सिर्फ लायन और टाइगर, लायन और टाइगर, सिर्फ दो ऑप्शन हैं। मेरा तो टाइगर है, मेरा तो टाइगर है। टाइगर फिर, ओके ओके। लायन ज़्यादा एम्फोसाइज करता है साला राजा बनने में। मैं भी टाइगर। अबे भैंचुत कैसा है तू, तो पीयर प्रेशर का भैंचुत चूद है तू, तो पीयर प्रेशर ही है भैंचूद। अभी लायन था ये, सपने टाइगर बोल दिया तो ये टाइगर हो गया क्या भाई? तू तो कुछ नहीं है भाई, फिर तू ना लायन है ना टाइगर है, तू है भैंचो डोंकी, जो मैंने स्ट्रीम के स्टार्टिंग में ही बोल दिया था कि तू नंबर वन डोंकी है। टाइगर एस्थेटिक ज़्यादा है, उसकी एसएम भी बढ़िया होगी यार। टाइगर भैंचो थोड़ा स्टाइलिश होता है यार, मतलब अपने रहन सहन में भी, दिखने में भी। लायन को बेचारे के ऊपर बहुत रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, लायन को बन के रहना पड़ता है राजा। टाइगर भैंचो चल रहता है, टाइगर को कुछ बनने की ज़रूरत नहीं होती। टाइगर टाइगर रहता है, मज़े करता है भाई, मारता है खाता है, और राजा बनने की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं होती उस पर। क्रेजी होता है टाइगर ना। लायन बेचारा झमेले में है भाई, जंगल का राजा बन के रहना पड़ेगा भाई। एक बार मैंने बहुत तगड़ी डॉक्यूमेंट्री टाइप देखी थी भाई, ये सही में होते हैं पता है लायन वगैरह ना, सही में राजा वाजा होते हैं जंगल के भाई, इनकी टेरिटरी होती है पूरी। लायन टोनी, टाइगर सिल्वियो। सिल्वियो यार नहीं यार, सिल्वियो थोड़ा सा बकवास है यार टाइगर के लिए। सिल्वियो इतना 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 थोड़ा फट जाती है यार सिल्वियो की ना, टाइगर की फटती नहीं है लायन के सामने भी। लायन ज़्यादा मस्कुलिन लगता है। हाँ, मैं तुम घोड़े हो, घोड़े तो हैं ही यार, घोड़ा गैंग तो है ही हमारा। हाउस द ड्रैगन सीजन 3 एपिसोड 2 क्रेजी है यार, मैंने मैंचो सीजन 2 ही नहीं देखा। फिर मतलब लायन भाई टाइगर की नहीं फटती लायन से भाई। हाँ डॉक्यूमेंट्री की बात बताता हूँ मैं, वो पान दे लाना कैसा है तो मैं बहुत बढ़िया हूँ सोनी भाई जी, मैं बहुत बढ़िया हूँ। आप कैसे हो यार? आप कैसे हो? आपको एक चीज़ बताना चाहूँगा, चलो छोड़ो बाद में बताऊँगा। या वर्ड भाई जी कैसे हो भाई? तो फिर भाई ये लायन लोगों की सच में टेरिटरी वगैरह होती है भाई। मैंने एक अफ्रीका के भैंचोद एक पूरी ट्राइब थी भाई शेरों की, उन्होंने बहुत सालों तक राज किया था भाई, बहुत सालों तक, बहुत सालों तक पूरे जंगल पे राज किया था। मतलब टाइगर के लिए किसको चूज करोगे कैरेक्टर? टाइगर के लिए यार टाइगर नहीं है शायद, टाइगर सप्रानोज में टाइगर वो था भाई पता है शायद यार, उसकी भी फट जाती है पर थोड़ी। जो इटालियन आदमी आया था ना, आई थिंक वो सबसे ज़्यादा सूटेबल होगा टाइगर के लिए। आई थिंक दैट इज इटालियन मदर फकर। बता 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 बता। अरे मैं ये कह रहा था कि यूट्यूब ऐसी मत मारना अपना, अगर बाहर से ही देने होते हैं तो किक पे मार दिया करो मजूरी, उसका मेरे पास बहुत कम परसेंट कटता है। लेकिन अभी क्या कहते हैं, यूट्यूब ऐसी भी चल जाएगी क्योंकि मुझे इसके $100 कंप्लीट करना है, तो इट्स फाइन, जैसे आपको ठीक लगे कभी भी। फ्यूरियो, ओ या यू माइट बी राइट, या उसकी मतलब थोड़ी फटती, पता नहीं, नहीं फटती नहीं है यार उसकी, उसकी फटती नहीं है फ्यूरियो की, बस वो बैक ऑफ कर लेता है, वो बैक ऑफ कर लेता है। और $100, $100 नहीं हुए ना यार, अभी 85 पे अटके हुए हैं। $100 करने ज़रूरी हैं इसके। अब तो महीना ख़त्म हो गया, अब इस महीने के 31 तक करनी है बहनचोद, हर महीने डिले हो जाते हैं। उसकी तो कभी नहीं फटी। हाँ लेकिन जब क्या कहते हैं, उस सेंस में जब वो वापस चला जाता है भाई इटली, वो उसकी टोनी सोप्रानो की बंदी को नहीं करता हिट, बैक ऑफ कर लेता है, उस सेंस में कह सकते हैं थोड़ी सी फटी, लेकिन पता नहीं शायद फटी नहीं थी भाई उसकी। बट फ्यूरियो ही याद आ रहा है मुझे, टाइगर आदमी तो सिर्फ और सिर्फ, लायन तो टोनी सोप्रानो ही है। बट यस कह सकते हैं फ्यूरियो कह सकते हैं। आज की स्ट्रीम है भाई स्केरी डून, डून देखी नहीं, डून नहीं देखी अभी तक। आज का थीम है भाई स्केरी, आज भाई तुम्हें डराना पड़ेगा मुझे, यू आर सेंड मी स्केरी स्टफ, सिर्फ और सिर्फ डरावनी चीज़ें देखनी है मुझे आज ना, मन है मेरा बहुत बहुत डरावनी से डरावनी, डरना चाहता हूँ मैं। लेकिन उससे पहले भाई चलो शटर खोल लेते हैं, पहले शटर खोल लेते हैं, पहले शटर खोल लेते हैं पहले। गैंड फाड़ दी रे, गैंड फाड़ दी, गैंड फाड़ दी, गैंड फाड़ दी, गैंड फाड़ दी रे। यार डरावनी से माइंड एंटर याद आता, कैंसिल कर दिया भोसड़ी वाले ने। माइंड एंटर डरावना, माइंड एंटर तो बहनचो थोड़ा वैसा नहीं था कि क्या कहते हैं, थोड़ा बहनचो उस क्रिमिनल के बारे में। दिस शिट स्केरी ना भाई, हॉन्टिंग ऑफ द हिल हाउस इज अ ब्यूटीफुल ब्यूटीफुल सीरीज भाई, मेरे फेवरेट हॉरर सीरीज है भाई हॉन्टिंग ऑफ द हिल हाउस। बिना ब्लैक शेड्स के स्मॉक्सन की शक्ल देख लो, सबसे डरावना है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है यार सोनी भाई, कम ऑन गैंग, कम ऑन गैंग। मतलब ये क्राइम, हाँ मैं हॉरर हॉरर चीज़ें देखनी है यार, हॉरर भूत या हॉरर चीज़ें देखनी है आज मुझे, वेरी स्केरी स्टफ़ देखना है मुझे, वेरी स्केरी स्टफ़। बहन की गैंड फट जाए मेरी अंदर तक। स्केरी साउंड बोर्ड भी लगा रखा है मैंने, स्केरी कितनी गंदी आवाज़ है, बहन की चूत यो। अगर किसी ने ईयरफोन्स लगा रखे होंगे ना भाई, उसकी तो गांड फटी होगी भाई। बट उसमें एक क्रिमिनल था, दैट मदरफकर वाज समथिंग। मैंने माइंड हंटर थोड़ा तो देखा है यार, मुझे याद नहीं कहाँ तक देखा था, लेकिन मैंने काफ़ी देखा था। बहनचो बहुत ख़तरनाक स्क्रीन थी यार ये तो, उसमें सच में डर लग गया मुझे, पता है फक मरे, सच में डर लग गया था भाई मुझे। बहुत गंदी स्क्रीन है भाई ये तो। तुम्हारे लिए अच्छी चीज़ करता हूँ एक। मज़ा आ रहा है यार, हैविंग फन। हाँ भाई यार हैविंग फन। सब म्यूट कर दो यार, डैम हाँ तो खतरनाक आवाज़ है भाई। शीट 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 नहीं भाई नहीं, नहीं 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 नहीं, मैनिफेस्ट ना हो जाए भाई कुछ ऐसा, मैनिफेस्ट ना हो। अब बंद कर दिया मैंने, नहीं कर रहा अब नहीं कर रहा यार, अब नहीं कर रहा, अब नहीं कर रहा। बैंड की चूत फुल वॉल्यूम थी, मज़ा आया। डिड आई वेक यू अप गैंग? कैसी लगी कॉफ़ी की स्मेल? हाँ भाई, मज़ा आया, मज़ा आया, मज़ा आया। हाँ, तुम्हारा दूसरा अंकल ने मॉन्स्टर पिला दी भाई, भाई को ना। आज 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 डोबर अंकल ने मॉन्स्टर गिफ्ट दिया भाई। अब पैन की चूते, ओए मज़े आ गए भाई, मज़े आ गए, मज़े आ गए। भेज रहे हो गया कुछ हॉरर मसाला भेज दो यार, हॉरर चीज़ देखनी है हमें। मैं तो लाया नहीं कुछ हॉरर, मुझे लगा तुम्हें ज़्यादा माल होगा हॉरर का। रिएक्शन सेंड्स में भेज सकते हो भाइयों, ये यहाँ पे भी लिंक भेज सकते हो जो मॉड है। बड़ा हॉरर स्टफ, डरना है मेरे को, डरना है, फटवानी है मेरे को, चार सलवानी है मेरे को। बीट बनाकर आ रहा था वैसे ही कान चूदे हैं अभी। कान नहीं चूदने भाई, अंदर तक रूह को चूदना है। मैं रूह को कंपन आनी चाहिए, रूह में, रूह को फील होना चाहिए कि भैंचोद फक। पॉज हो जाते हैं पता है जब भूत दिखता है, ऐसा मैंने सुना है। जैसे भूत दिखता है वैसे रुक जाते हैं भाई, 2 सेकंड के लिए कुछ कर ही नहीं पाते। स्लीप पैरालिसिस हुआ है भाई तुम्हें कभी? स्लीप पैरालिसिस हुआ है कि भाई हिल ही नहीं पा रहे, हिल ही नहीं पा रहे सोते हुए, तुमने कुछ ना कुछ दबा रहा है तुम्हें सपने में, और भाई उसकी वजह से तुम हिल ही नहीं पा रहे। होता है मेरे साथ, लेकिन शायद 7-8 महीने में एक बार या साल में एक बार। पर भाई बहुत डरावना लगता है मुझे, बहुत बहुत गंदा लगता है भाई। एक बार बस, 3-4 बार तो हुआ है भाई। आज दिन में 3 बार टट्टी हो गई। अबे तेरे को कल भी टट्टी आ रही थी, क्या बात हो गई भाई? सूसू रिटेंशन पे जा, अपने टट्टी के बहनचोद जहाँ से तेरी टट्टी निकलती है वहाँ पे तू बहनचोद सीमेंट भरवा, अपने पहुँच ढूंढ, लेबर को ढूंढ, चौक पे मिलेगी किसी, उनको लेके जा घर। मेरे एक दोस्त ने बताया था, बताया हुआ उन्हें क्या? अच्छा दोस्त को होता है, मुझे रोज़ होता है, सुबह के टाइम रोज़ होता है। बट द फक इज समथिंग इज रॉन्ग विद यू भाई। या फिर ओल्ड हैक को तेरे से प्यार हो चुका है शेरू भाई। ओल्ड हैक लव्स यू शायद। ओल्ड हैक पता है, तुम्हें देखा हूँ तुम्हें ओल्ड हैक क्या होता है भाई? ओल्ड हैक पता है क्या होता है भाई? ओल्ड हैक, ओल्ड हैक बहुत गंदी चीज़ होती है भाई। ओल्ड हैक ना ऐसी होती है ओल्ड हैक। तो जब जब क्या कहते हैं भाई, स्लीप पैरालिसिस होता है ना भाई, तो जो ऑकल्ट वाली दुनिया है ना, और जो थोड़ी ब्लैक मैजिक टाइप दुनिया है, उसमें बोलते हैं कि भाई ये आके ना तुम्हारे ऊपर आके बैठ जाती है भाई, इसलिए तुम हिल नहीं पाते। तो तेरे घर में भाई ओल्ड हैग है शायद शेरवट। हाँ सच में, एक बार इतना गंदा हुआ था, रात को मम्मी के पास जाकर सो गया था भाई। ये पड़ी हुई है तेरे पीछे। यो कैसे हो प्राइवेसी भाईजी? यो ये पड़ी हुई है भाई तेरे पीछे, फॉर रियल भाई। दिखाता हूँ तुझे, अच्छे से बताता हूँ क्या होती है ओल्ड हैग एक्सप्लेन्ड। तेरी कैंड फट जाएगी भाई। आपने एक्सपीरियंस किया है? किया है मैंने भाई। द नाइट हैग नहीं, द ओल्ड हैग, द ओल्ड हैग स्लीप पैरालिसिस। ये रहा बहन चो, द ओल्ड हैग अगर्स एवरीवेयर इन ह्यूमन कल्चर। फक गैंड फट जाएगी तुम्हारी शायद। बहुत गंदा होता है भाई, बहुत गंदा होता है ये, बहुत गंदा होता है। मेरी दादी जैसी लग रही।
What is the old hag?
भाई एक बार मुझे सच में ही ओल्ड हैग आ गई थी मेरे सपने में। एक सपने में ऐसा स्लीप पैरालिसिस हुआ था मुझे भाई। मेरा एक दोस्त है, उसके घुंघराले से बाल थे, और वो बंदा भैंचूत सपने में आके भाई मेरे वो ओल्ड हैग बना हुआ था, और वो मेरे ऊपर बैठ गया था भाई, छाती के ऊपर। वो दोस्त ही मेरा बहन की चूत, और भाई एकदम बुढ़ा हो रखा था वो, और लड़की बना पड़ा था एकदम, जैसी ये फ़ोटो दिखाते ना वैसा भाई। बॉडी जाम हो जाती मेरे भाई, बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है हिलना यार। बहुत गांड फट रही होती है भाई जब हिलने की कोशिश करते हैं ना, और हिल भी नहीं पा रहे होते। कैसे हो एडियल भाई जी? बहुत गंदी होती है यार ये। वाह सच में भाई, नॉट इवन किडिंग भाई, बहुत गंदा होता है अगर किसी ने एक्सपीरियंस किया है तो भाई। एक ही बार एक्सपीरियंस किया है मैंने स्केरी एक्सपीरियंस, सोते हुए या फिर असली में बहनचूत की हाल अंक दे। आई एम गुड अडियल भाई जी। स्केरी मूवी के 2 पार्ट देख लिए कल से, बढ़िया कॉमेडी है दोनों। स्केरी मूवी तो बढ़िया होती है, स्केरी मूवी बढ़िया होती है। 0 से 36 पे नंबर 5 गेस करके बोलो। आई एम प्लेइंग रोलेट भाई जी। 0 से 36 पे 5 नंबर। ओके 21, 13, 11, 7 एंड 35। रुको ना आगे आता, आ जाओ आ जाओ। आज ओपन दी डोर के पास ब्लैक फिगर दिख रहा। व्हाट द फक। यू श्योर की शैडो ऐड होनी थी, यू श्योर की शैडो ऐड होनी थी। डिस्कॉर्ड सर्वर का लिंक पिन कर रहा हूँ भाइयों। एकदम डरावना माल भेज दो, एकदम डरावना, एकदम डरावना माल चाहिए मुझे, एकदम डरावना माल भाई, कि मेरी गैंड फट जाए भाई। यू लाफ यू लूज होता है ना, वैसा ही भाई, वैसा ही कुछ। मुझे डराना है तुम्हें, हंसाने की जगह डराना है भाई। डिस्कॉर्ड सर्वर पेन कर दिया मैंने, इसमें रिएक्शन सेंस में भेज देना भाइयों। ये दिखाता हूँ तुम्हें, तब तक ओल्ड हैग दिखाता हूँ तुम्हें। हरामजादी ओल्ड हैग भाई, हरामजादी ओल्ड हैग।
Humans, we all share some common experiences, no matter what part of the world we live in, and no matter what our culture may be. We share them because we are human. Some are obvious. We are all born. We all gather sustenance.
अबे ये क्या सार क्या बांधने
We
लग
all
जाते
sleep,
हैं यार।
we all dream, we all love and hate, and we all die.
Why the fuck ये
These are
सार
things
क्यों
we
बांधते हैं?
understand. However, there are other experiences we share that are not so easily understood,
Oh no,
such as
मर रहा है,
dreams,
मर रहा है, मर
sleep
रहा है,
paralysis,
मर रहा
and
है,
the old hag.
मर रहा है।
The old hag occurs every
डर लगता है भाई मुझे यार इससे, सच में डर लगता है मुझे
in
इससे।
every human culture. It is
ये तो
sometimes
वो
called
छाती पे बैठ जाता है, ये छाती पे बैठ जाती है। ये देखो आ गई ना ओल्ड हैग, छाती पे बैठती है।
an experience, sometimes a phenomenon.
ये कोई बीमारी है क्या, ठीक नहीं हो सकती क्या भाई? ओल्ड हैग से पीछे छुड़वाना पड़ेगा शेर वर्ल्ड भाई जी। देखते हैं इसका तोड़ बता। हाउ वी विल सर्च भाई, हाउ टू गेट रेड ऑफ द ओल्ड हैग, ये भी सर्च करेंगे भाई अभी हम आपकी आज दिक्कत से आपको बचाएंगे भाई।
But it is sometimes, in fact, often called an attack, and for good reason, because it is often utterly terrifying. So
क्या
what is it?
होता तो है भाई,
Let's
बहुत
take a
बहुत लकी हो भाई जिसको आज तक कभी नहीं हुआ ना ये।
look. But please don't doze off, because something might be waiting for you.
हाँ ना, टोटका करना पड़ेगा अब तो बाबा के पास। मैं कर दूंगा टोटका शेर वर्ड भाई जी। ऊपर चैट मारो आज ओल्ड हैग की बहनचोद, मैं लगाता हूँ वाट। ऐसा ऐसा जादू मारूंगा फेंक के ओल्ड हैग बहनचोद। अगर आई भी ना, मतलब जादू ऐसा होगा भाई, अगर ओल्ड हैग आई भी तो भाई वो इतनी हॉट बन के आएगी ना, और वो बुढ़ी नहीं होगी भाई, और एकदम जवान होगी, एकदम टोटा होगी भाई, टोटा। और वो आगे तेरी छाती पे बैठेगी। इतना कर सकता हूँ मैक्स, इतना तो कर ही सकता हूँ, मतलब इतना तो कर ही दूंगा भाई। अगर पूरा कैंसिल ना कर पाऊँ, बहन की चूत जवान कर दूंगा ओल्ड हैग को ना, और सुंदर कर दूंगा।
Is the old hag. The old hag phenomenon, experience or attack, is a constellation of separate elements. Central to this suite of elements is sleep paralysis, also known as nocturnal paralysis, sleep numbness, and post-dormital.
और कोई ओल्ड हैग को सोच सोच के मुठ मार तो क्या होगा भाई? फिर तुम्हारे लंड पे बैठ जाएगी ना एक बार जीरो भाई जी। फिर जो लंड पैरालिसिस होगा ना भाई, फिर अपनी जो तूने फ्यूचर प्लानिंग कर रखी है वो भूल जाइयो भाई। तेरा कोई बच्चा नहीं होगा भाई जिंदगी भर।
Thing. Sleep-associated paralysis. A key element to the experience of sleep paralysis is the feeling of being completely awake, but unable to move any
या
with the exception.
ऐसा ही होता है भाई, पता है? तुम हिलने की कोशिश कर रहे होते भाई पूरी जान लगा के कि तुम उठे हुए हो, लेकिन भैंचोद हिल ही नहीं पा रहे होते हो भाई, हिल ही नहीं पा रहे
of
होते
the
हो।
eyelids and eyes. No other part of the body responds to the attempt at voluntary movement. It typically lasts only a few seconds, but can last up to several minutes.
That one guy who comes in everyone's dream.
Sleep paralysis was once thought to be extremely rare and associated with narcolepsy, but is now known to be quite common, with estimates of its occurrence ranging from 20%
बढ़
to
चुकी हैं
60%
ओल्ड
of
हैग्स
the world's
दुनिया में
population.
शायद।
Typically, a person may experience 1 or 2 episodes in a lifetime, but some people can experience regular episodes at intervals
भैंचोद चार पर, ये तो तेरी बात कर रहा है शेरवर्ड।
of days, weeks, or months, and very few can experience them almost every night for varying periods of time. The crucial element to the old hag experience which sets it apart from simple sleep paralysis is the acute awareness, sometimes accompanied by a visual experience of some sort of presence in the room with the sleeper. This may include the sensation of an entity standing over the experiencer, or the sensation of the bed being depressed by the weight of something sitting or lying on it. This presence may be strongly sensed and felt, but not seen.
सर्च करो ये सेंटेंस, एक इमेज आएगी. The one guy who comes in everyone's dream. कोई इमेज नहीं आ रही है, कोई इमेज नहीं आ रही है. द मैन, दिस मैन, ये तो मेरे सपने में नहीं आया कभी. ये तो मेरे सपने में कभी नहीं आया भाई. ना 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 यार, बहनचोद पर ऐसा क्यों लग रहा है कि ये देखा देखा है. ऐसा क्यों लग रहा है कि ये देखा देखा है. आप व्हाट द फक. देखा देखा तो लग रहा है. मेरे आया था, देखा देखा लग रहा है भाई. भाई अब आ जाएगा. पता है तूने क्या कर दिया भाई. ये
or may typically manifest
अब आ
as a dark
जाएगा
shadow,
आरामजादा.
a dark mist, or a human shape with no defining features, except occasionally for intensely dark eyes, darker than the entity itself. There may also be the tactile sensation of being touched, prodded, or even pinched. Most
अबे ये तो कोई मीम मटेरियल लग रहा है. अबे खराब, देखियो उसकी शक्ल ध्यान से देख भाई. गंदा है भाई, ये गंदा है. ये इसकी आंखें देख. कुछ है इसमें, गलत है कुछ इसमें भाई.
and central to the experience, the sleeper may feel a heavy weight on their body, typically on the chest, but sometimes on the legs, and sometimes the sensation of being strangled. The sense of wakeful paralysis coupled with the weight pressing on the body is a classic old hag attack. The experience is almost invariably terrifying, and in fact, is the source of the concept of the
बचपन में तो ब्लडी मैरी वाली स्टोरी पे भी फटती थी
and Anglo-Saxon.
भाई. शिनचैन का एक एपिसोड आता था भाई, उसमें मेरी बहुत फटी थी. शिनचैन का एक एपिसोड है भाई जिसमें भूत की कहानी होती है, जिसमें वो बाथरूम में भूत होता है, कोई पता नहीं. शिनचैन का एक एपिसोड तो है भाई ऐसा, उसमें मेरी गैंड फटी थी बहुत.
Which may have originally meant night death or something similar. Nightmares were not just bad dreams, as the term is used today, nor were they night terrors. These are different phenomena. Instead, they were regarded as some sort of supernatural assault, sometimes as a result of being cursed or bewitched. How widespread
वो
is
कार्ड्स
this?
वाला मुझे बिल्कुल अच्छे से याद नहीं कि उसमें क्या होता था, लेकिन भाई आई रिमेंबर एक शिनचैन का एपिसोड है जो बहुत डरावना है. शिनचैन में बहुत सारे हॉरर एपिसोड हैं. हराम ज़्यादा है भाई शिनचैन ना भाई. गांड फटी थी मेरी, गांड फटी थी बहुत
The
तगड़ी.
old hag has equivalents in virtually every culture in which the phenomenon has been studied. It is well known, for instance, in Canada's Newfoundland, where it is a part of the cultural tradition and has been studied extensively in Japan, where it is called kanashibari, or bandit with metal.
कनाशीबारी.
It has also been documented across the United States, Europe, throughout Asia, and among the various indigenous groups of the far north, the Inuit, Yupik, and Aleut. In the United States, which contains a number of subcultures, the pattern is the same. Sleep paralysis is usually but not always hypnopompic, the presence of an unknown and unwelcome entity, and the feeling of physical oppression. It is a universal human experience, which I think you'll agree is terrifying. But what causes it? There are
बहनचोद कुछ बढ़िया बात ही नहीं बता रही है तो बहनचोद बकवास बातें बता रहे. द ओल्ड हैग सिंड्रोम ऐसी होती है भाई, देख लो ऐसी आती है. हेडमैन तो हमें नहीं पता भाई. फ्रेरन हेट्स बीइंग कोल्ड. ओल्ड हैग. फ्रेरन को क्यों ओल्ड हैग बोला भाई.
Thank you not to call me an old.
ब्लड. इंग्लिश की आवाज़ तो बहुत गंदी है यार. फ्रीरन की इंग्लिश वाली आवाज़ तो बहुत गंदी है यार. डैम, अच्छा हुआ इंग्लिश में नहीं देखता मैं एनिमे भाई. मेरे को तो दिक्कत हो जाती भाई. ये तो ज़िंदगी में मेरी बहुत बड़ी. और मैं इंग्लिश वाली आवाज़ सुन लिया हो तो फ्रीरन की तो. जैक अटैक. जैक अटैक. व्हाट द फक इज जैक अटैक. अबे हैंड की लोड़े चैनल ना उड़ जाए मेरा. पर यूट्यूब पे ही है भैंचू दिए भी नहीं.
The blankets feel pain.
Of course not.
Like that lobster my dad threw in the boiling water that time.
Okay, so why don't you scoop out the insides?
Brains.
Good. Watch your hands.
वाओ. These people are so festive. चुप रह रतना दीपास, खत्म हो गए, 4 दिन पुरानी बात है वो। ये निक अप, what the fuck, shut the fuck up.
Candle over there.
Oh no, भूत, कितना भूतिया है लाल।
Close your eyes.
They're closed.
Okay, now.
जैक इन द बॉक्स लग रहा है। जैक अटैक।
Oh,
It's supposed to scare you.
I'm terrified.
Oh,
You want a pumpkin seed? Don't, honey. He'll choke.
हाँ भाई कैसे हो? बढ़िया हूँ। तोड़ दिया है, मारो इसे, थप्पड़ मारो बच्ची। ओह नो, व्हाट द फक, इसे क्या हो रहा है? व्हाट द फक?
Okay. Cough. Cough. Jack, cough. Jack. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
911
It's gonna kill me.
911 क्यों नहीं कर रही है? What the fuck is she doing?
Shut up, Oscar.
अबे क्या कर रही?
What the? Jack? Okay.
पागल है क्या ये औरत? नो चैनल उड़ेगा? ये भी तो YouTube पे ही है। एज रिस्ट्रिक्टेड वीडियो। बेटे स्ट्रीम के लोले लग जाएंगे, भैंचो स्ट्रीम के लोले लग जाएंगे। तू पागल है क्या? कॉफी गाय?
Marilyn Manson intentionally became the monster that he knew America secretly loved. He embraced every fear parents, politicians, and religious groups had about rock music and used it as inspiration for his art.
I love Marilyn Manson.
Result, whenever society needed someone to blame for mass shootings, serial killers, and occult murderers, Manson was their first choice. But he welcomed this criticism with open arms, with the hope that anyone accusing him would take a look in the mirror and ask themselves what they have done to contribute to America's problems. However, building a career around being the villain almost always ends in disaster. In 2021, more than a dozen women came forward and accused Marilyn Manson of violent physical and emotional abuse. But with a long history of sadistic tendencies and a secret never before seen video with a young girl that could easily get him sent to prison, people started wondering what
तो अब तक prison में क्यों नहीं गया है? Which could easily send him to prison? तो फिर prison में गया नहीं है?
whether or not Marilyn Manson was just a character or if he was always hiding his twisted depravity in plain sight.
You think you're gonna get married and you're gonna have a happy family and you're gonna live? Sit down.
Damn. What the fuck is it doing?
Before the makeup, color
गंदा ये तो बाहर का तीर फरसाना है क्या? ये नहीं 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 नहीं, ये तो आइकन है बहनचोद, ये तो आइकन है भाई। आप द कॉन्ज्यूरिंग देखिए या मैंने देखी है कॉन्ज्यूरिंग यार।
contacts and urinating on his fans, Marilyn Manson was just Brian Warner from Canton, Ohio. He couldn't have had a more stereotypical 1970s American conservative upbringing. He grew up in a middle-class religious household. His father, Hugh, was a devout Catholic, and his mother, Barbara, was a Christian. The family attended church services every week throughout his childhood, while his parents enrolled him in a non-denominational Christian school. But his home life wasn't as picture-perfect as you'd see in family photos. His father was often physically aggressive towards Brian when he was present and emotionally distant the rest of the time, which made him solely dependent on his mother for parental guidance.
लास्ट ईयर हेरिडेटरी मूवी देखी थी, हॉरर अच्छी थी। लास्ट मैंने अच्छी हॉरर मूवी यार पता नहीं डाबी देखी थी शायद, डाबी 6।
He said, I was kind of a mama's boy, but I had a weird relationship with my mom as a kid because it was kind of abusive. But on my part, I wish I could go back and change the way I treated my mom because I used to be really rude to her. She didn't really have any kind of control over me. I hit her.
Haunting of the Hill House अच्छी लगती है यार मुझे। Haunting of the Hill House और फिर उसका सेकंड पार्ट भी वो वो अच्छा लगता है मुझे। वो पता नहीं इतनी मॉडर्न कहेंगे उसे कि नहीं। मुझे पहली बार बहुत डर लगा था वो देखा तो, बचपन में भी देखी होगी। बचपन में मुझे इंसीडियस बहुत डरावनी लगती थी, लेकिन फर्स्ट पार्ट देखता हूँ, आई हैव नॉट सीन इट भाई, बहुत बढ़िया है। मतलब भाई इन द ये इर्रेस्पेक्टिव ऑफ हॉरर भाई, फिर भी अच्छा, अगर तुम उससे हॉरर हटा दोगे ना तब भी बहुत अच्छी स्टोरी है भाई। एक बार तो देखना बनता है। व्हेन इविल लर्क्स देखी नहीं, एक बार तो देखना पड़ता है। इट्स फकिंग ब्यूटीफुल भाई, क्या म्यूजिक होता है बहनचोद, मज़ा आ जाएगा, मज़ा आ जाएगा, वर्थ वॉचिंग भाई।
spit on her, and tried to choke her. She never retaliated. She just cried, and I never felt sorry for her. One incident in particular resulted in Brian putting his own mother in the hospital when Barbara refused to tell her where she had been. Brian assumed she was cheating on his father. In a fit of rage, he threw a cologne bottle directly at his mother's face, splitting her lip open and leaving a scar that would never fade away. And while this doesn't fully explain why Brian was so demented, it's important to note that Barbara herself played a role in damaging his mind. And
ये देखो रत्ना दिपास, डाबी सिक्स, ये टर्किश मूवी है, टर्किश है शायद, पता नहीं टर्किश है, ईरानियन है, क्या है भैंचोद, हॉलीवुड नहीं है लेकिन, और इंडियन भी नहीं है, लेकिन भैंचोद ये मेरे को बहुत डराया था भाई इसने मुझे।
Contributing to this toxic behavior, she suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which was a psychological disorder where someone projects a non-existent illness onto their child. Women with this bizarre condition are known to compulsively lie to others and themselves. They might lock their young children in rooms, prevent them from seeing the outside world for days on end, and become angry or violent if the victim doesn't cooperate with their perception of reality. For years, Brian believed that he had a handful of different allergies and contracted pneumonia 6 different times. When a parent constantly convinces their child that they're sick or incapable of functioning on their own, it distorts the child's understanding of reality. The parent becomes both the source of comfort and the source of suffering. But this was only the beginning of Brian's twisted life. At 8 years old, Brian was nearly suffocated to death after a stranger broke into his home and smothered him with a pillow. Around that same time, he also became the victim of molestation by a kid a few years older who lived next door. He said,
ये तो बिल्ला के घर की स्टोरी है, बिल्ला के आस पड़ोस की स्टोरी है। तो बिल्ला के आस पड़ोस तो भैंचोद ऐसे नहीं बने बच्चे, मैरिलन मैनसन जैसे हैं। बिल्ला के आस पड़ोस होता है ये तो। आई विल वॉच डाबी सिक्स विद माय कजन्स एंड मामा की शादी। ओके एंजॉय, मजा आएगा भाई आपको, ज्ञान बढ़ जाएगी, उनकी ज्ञान बढ़ जाएगी।
experienced many different types of
इंग्लिश में मत देखना बाय द वे, जो रीजनल मूवीज़ है ना भाई, उन्हें मदर टंग जो उनकी रीजनल लैंग्वेज होती है उन्हीं में देखा करो भाई, ओरिजिनल लैंग्वेज में ही देखा करो। कैसे हुई भाई जी, नमस्ते, ओरिजिनल लैंग्वेज में ही देखा करो भाई, बता रहा हूँ भाई। सारा मज़ाक किरकिरा हो जाता है भाई, सारा मज़ाक किरकिरा हो जाता है, क्योंकि भाई जो इमोशंस होते हैं ना भाई ओरिजिनल लैंग्वेज में, जो तुम्हें टोन में सुनाई देते हैं लोगों के डायलॉग्स में, वो भैंचो डबिंग में सारे ख़त्म हो जाते हैं। तो भाई कोई अगर तुम दूसरे रीजन की कोई भी चीज़ देख रहे हो, कोई भैंचो मराठी मूवी देख रहे हो लेट्स से, कैसे समझो फिर सबटाइटल्स से भाई जी, सबटाइटल्स लगाओ ना इंग्लिश के। क्या बात कर रहे हो भाई।
abuse from all different directions. Then there was his grandfather, who he described as the ugliest, darkest, foulest, most depraved figure of my childhood.
इतनी हेट दादू से। वो क्लिप देखी थी जिसने फ्रेंच वुमन को एक पीसफुल कम्युनिटी वाले से शादी कर दिया और वो पाकिस्तान ले गया और 5 बच्चा पैदा कर दिया और घर से बाहर नहीं निकलने देता था 10 साल से। बहन चूत, पीसफुल कम्युनिटी वाले क्रेजी हैं भाई। हिंदी डब में देखो भाई, ना भाई मैं नहीं देख सकता, डब वब में नहीं देख सकता मैं। मराठी तो थोड़ा सा अच्छा समझ आ रहा है, लेकिन ये हाउ, अरे भाई ये हाउ क्या मतलब भैंचो, जो ओरिजिनल लैंग्वेज है उसमें देख और नीचे इंग्लिश सबटाइटल्स लगा ले, दैट्स ऑल गैंग।
Brian used to sneak down to his grandfather's basement and watch the old man hunch himself over a toy train set, gooning to bestiality prawn with grotesque guttural noises emanating from a hole left in his throat by a tracheotomy. However, into adulthood, he'd do his best to flip it around as some kind of life lesson for his artistic future.
As a kid, I looked at him the way that my family probably still looks at him, as an aberration, as a freak, something that doesn't make sense. But after writing the book and experiencing what I've gone through over the past few years, the way the world looks at me, I think now I have more in common with my grandfather.
ये तो नहीं हो रहा बिल्ला की गली में, ये तो नहीं हो रहा बिल्ला की गली में,
because I'm treated.
क्या होता बिल्ला बन जाए ऐसा। I mean, he's a freaky ass motherfucker. नहीं?
the same way.
But
It's
in
a-
many ways, you've become your grandfather, haven't you?
in
बेचारे का
some ways,
बहुत ही
and
बुरा
I
बचपन.
don't see him as the monster that I used to
No,
see him.
for
I see
real,
him
bhai.
as someone who's misunderstood.
And while his parents believed a religious education would build the future they wanted Brian to have, the restrictions and rules he experienced at Christian school only fueled the rebellion they were trying to prevent. But before we get into that, we all live busy lives. There
अरे
are so many
तेरी माँ की चूत बहन के लोड़े प्रमोशन तेरी माँ
no
चोद
one
दूंगा मैं
effort made.
बैंड.
Stories of a wrathful God, the looming Antichrist, and the rapture gave the young Warner nightmares. He also dealt with a lot of bullying, which would leave a deep cut for the rest of his life. On his 1994 single, Lunchbox, Manson recalls fending off bullies by swinging an aluminum Kiss lunchbox. I want to be a
किस
big
लंच
rock
बॉक्स?
and
अबे
roll
रूम में सनग्लास क्यों पहना है? I like it, gang. That's our role. That's our role, motherfucker. That's our role. That's our role, bitch. That's our role. That's our role. That's our role, motherfucker. That's our role. That's our role.
Hey, everything be like off the top these days. Like,
I mean,
these days I don't even know what a
Hey.
is these days, you know?
Hey.
Yeah. Fuck that hoe, cause she a nat.
You ain't want the big baby. You ain't the
need, bitch. You want me to take my time with you, or maybe I'm not your speed,
Bitch.
Maybe I'm not your lead,
Bitch.
You ain't got no cheese, bitch. Maybe I'm just too G for you, maybe I'm just too screed, bitch.
I can even roll in peace.
Everybody notice me.
Yeah, I can even go to sleep. I'm rolling on the beat. They'll give me a
Got on my knee like
Jesus, please. You don't believe in Jesus. Why you gotta Jesus, please? If you don't leave, just leave. Oi.
Even the blind can see, but she ain't gon'
पुरानी वाली टेप है बहुत बढ़िया है. पुरानी वाली टेप है ना, कोडक ब्लैक की पुरानी टेप है बहुत बढ़िया है भाई. तुम्हें बताऊं कोडक ब्लैक की बढ़िया टेप है. कोडक ब्लैक बहुत अच्छी टेप है भाई. इसकी पुरानी ना, अब तो ये मादर चौथ नशेड़ी बन चुका है भाई. मोटा आर्टिस्ट तो मोटा आर्टिस्ट भाई, मोटा आर्टिस्ट. बहुत पहले की हैं यार, बहुत पहले की हैं. वाओ मैन जो मेरा आते ही #1 हो गया. क्या हो गया #1? पता नहीं, आई डोंट नो भाई. जी शेड भाई, इसकी क्या क्या एल्बम थी यार, बहुत अच्छी एल्बम थी भाई इसकी. 2020 से पहले की, पता है, मुझे याद करने दो भाई. ये इसके बाद से शायद ये थोड़ा मैंने सुनना कम कर दिया था. एक वाइट सा कवर आर्ट था एक एल्बम का ना, इसकी वाइट सा कवर आर्ट था थोड़ा. ये भी बढ़िया एल्बम है. लिल बैक नहीं, ये नहीं यार. ये है भाई, ये है मोटी एल्बम. इंस्टीट्यूशन 2015 बैंड चुदी है. बहुत मोटी एल्बम, बहुत मोटी एल्बम है भाई इंस्टीट्यूशन. एंडी पैरल यार टी शर्ट बता बढ़िया कहाँ से लूँ क्या बहन चूत. और भी थी यार, ईपी थी क्या वो शायद. अमेजिंग आर्टिस्ट. अभी इसको कान्ये वेस्ट भी लाया था अपने शो पे, पता है. अभी इसको कान्ये वेस्ट लाया था अपने शो पे. पता नहीं बहन चूत का है, आई डोंट नो. लेकिन बढ़िया है. इंस्टीट्यूशन सुन लेना भाई, वो इंस्टीट्यूशन सुन लेना, मजा आ जाएगा.
star. So
भाई
no
जी
one
मैं
effort
जल्लाद
made by
चलाओ ना
high
ऐसे
school
ही जो है.
teachers did their best to warn their students of the darkness
ये क्रेजी वाली प्लेलिस्ट खोलना अपनी ना.
and evil that plagued the media, on television, in movies, and in music. Manson later explained, they said, "Don't listen to this. They played Led Zeppelin backwards, Black Sabbath, and they played Kiss."
लेड ज़ेपलिन बैकवर्ड्स, व्हाट द फक. लेड ज़ेपलिन उल्टा क्यों सुन रहे थे ये हैं? ये क्या बात हुई?
And they were convinced that it was knights in Satan's service. And yet all of this just made him want to indulge more into this so-called dark side. Brian found comfort and identity in heavy metal music. By the mid-80s, the genre was exploding in popularity. Many artists leaned into the hypersexuality, violence, and anti-religious messaging that fueled media outrage. And the more authority figures condemned it, the more the teenagers wanted to hear it. Manson was about to take this strategy
क्या
to
चल
the
ये भाई? व्हाट द
extremes.
फक ओल्डी क्या होता है बहन के लोड़े यार. अंक तक ठीक है भाई, व्हाट द फक इज ओल्डी बहन चूद. अंक सुन के पागल हो जाता हूँ मैं तो. तू तो बहन चूद ओल्डी. फक यू. Fuck you. Oldie. And then Goldie. I thought it must be because I nigga such Hey. When A$AP Rocky used to be good, bye.
And his new music and performances would become so popular with dejected youth that he would become public enemy #1 to religious conservatives all over America. While Brian Warner loved heavy metal music, he initially studied at Broward Community College to get a degree in journalism. However, the first article he ever wrote was about an alter ego named Marilyn Manson and how he felt it reflected the world around him. The name
अब तो सबकी alter ego नहीं होती भैंचो, जो तुम सोशल मीडिया पे नाम रखते हो तुम्हारी alter ego ही है भैंचो, हर किसी की alter ego है। अभी चैट में थे इसका नाम यीट है, ये यीट इसकी alter ego है भैंचो, ये एंटी पैरेलल है, ये alter ego है एंटी पीस की भैंचो, जो भी इसका असली नाम है। सबकी alter ego होती है भाई अब शायद ना, पहले शायद रेयर होता था, अब तो भैंचो बनवाते हैं। अब तो व्हाट्सएप पे भी बोल रहे हैं तुम्हें alter ego बनाओ, अपनी भैंचो यूजर नेम लो।
The name was created by combining the names Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson. Marilyn Monroe was an American icon remembered for her beauty and sex appeal, whereas Charles Manson was a sociopathic cult leader responsible for the murder of 9 people. But you guys,
ऐसा नहीं है, ब्यूटीफुल किलर जैसे रख लेते हैं भाई यहाँ पे, एटीट्यूड चॉकलेट बॉय, ऐसा कुछ सोच के ही रखा है इसने अपना नाम मैरिलन मैनसन। हॉट किलर, बैंड की चूत। मैनसन तो बढ़िया तो दिखता।
Have an obsession with serial killers or no more
बहन चो मॉनरो बोल देता
than the rest of America does.
कितना सुंदर था वो लड़की। लैग अब भाई ये YouTube चुदा पड़ा है यार अनुराधा जी। Everything is fine on my end भाई, everything is fine on my end। YouTube चुद रहा है भाई।
Of what America's about. The name Marilyn Manson came from watching a lot of talk shows and reading, Hollywood Babylon, that type of literature.
ये क्या दिक्कत आ चुकी है भाई? ये मैं देख रहा डोपरमैन की स्ट्रीम पे भी यही दिक्कत आ रही थी। लैग व्हाट द फक इज गोइंग ऑन? बढ़वा दो यार, टारगेट थोड़ा 0 पे अटके पड़े हैं यार। आई डोंट नो हाउ एनी लैग, पता नहीं किसी में होता है, किसी में नहीं हो रहा होता। टारगेट बढ़वा दो यार थोड़ा, 0 पे हैं। व्हाट द फक, मेरा तो नहीं हो रहा लैग। वही बात है खीतेर भाई जी, किसी का हो रहा है किसी का नहीं हो रहा।
And realizing that Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson, to me, were the most memorable people from the 60s for their own separate reasons. And putting those two together was a pretty powerful balance that was kind of irreconcilable, like male and female, positive and negative.
Marilyn was a creative escape to explore seemingly unnatural or inappropriate topics. There was Marilyn Manson, but there was no music yet. I created a fake world, maybe because I didn't like the one I was living in, but that's what made me make music. I had to fill in the gaps I'd created. These feelings would be eventually channeled into actual music with the band Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids in 1989.
How would you like your present and future audiences to perceive you?
Well, I want them to take us seriously, but to have fun at the same time.
In the beginning, Manson had not quite channeled that full-blown rock star persona. He seemed more like a social outcast wanting to put some honest art out into the world.
This is a poem that I composed in high school. It's called, I never had a name for it, so I'll just read it.
The band was quickly becoming established as an interesting new talent in their local scene in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But becoming a successful band in the pre-social media era meant Brian had to get creative to market himself. He once bought tickets to a live MTV show taping, pretending to be a huge fan of the host so he could promote his band's live show in New York City.
We wanted Gail. I came here to marry her. She's not here, I'm sad.
What can I say? I hate to disappoint you, man, but
I have this picture of her that I
very cool. Now, you took this picture off the television?
Yeah.
That's very cool. You in New York for a while?
Yeah, we're here for 3 days. We're in a band and we're doing a showcase tomorrow. So.
From Miami, you said?
Yeah, we're from Miami. Band's Marilyn Manson.
After a few years performing at local venues, crafting a more hard rock sound,
smart,
and opening up for bigger bands, Manson met and built a strong relationship with Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails. Reznor would end up signing him in 1993 to Nothing Records, his imprint record label under Interscope. From there, Nine Inch Nails took Marilyn Manson on the self-destruct tour after the release of their smash hit album, The Downward Spiral. Manson was playing in front of 2,500 people across the USA every night for months, making it the perfect time to release their debut album, Portrait of an American Family. However, the album did not chart and failed to see any commercial success. While Manson had a captivating image, often performing in skin-tight androgynous clothes with makeup and fake blood all over his face, the early 90s was just too competitive and saturated with
140p 2 FPS चल रही स्ट्रीम मेरी यार, क्या कर रहा है YouTube ने माँ चोद रखी यार सारे क्रिएटर्स की। क्यों हो रहा है भाई ऐसा यार, क्यों हो रहा है ऐसा, क्यों ज़बरदस्ती किया जा रहा है ऐसा। हरदमान भाई जी मेथड बता चुके हैं भाई तुम लोगों को, VPN यूज़ करके भाई स्ट्रीम देखो यार, एंड VPN यूज़ करो भाई जी दूसरे कंट्री का। ये क्या बात होगी भाई, इंडिया में बहन चो इतनी टेक्नोलॉजी की क्या दिक्कत है भाई, व्हाट द फक।
Exciting new rock music. He needed to level up, and he quickly figured out that he had a gift for captivating people just by talking about what was on his mind.
Individuality is something that is often discouraged in the American household.
Local server से query की BT होगी कुछ।
That's something that I try to encourage to anyone who listens to our music. And it's not about how you look or the way you dress. Individuality is what you think, and if you think for yourself. Not everybody wants to be an individual. A lot of people don't want the burden to be an individual. It's too tough for them to think for themselves. They want to let MTV tell them what's cool, and they want to let religion or their parents tell them what they should think.
Marilyn has consistently promoted individuality and free thinking. He believed people should create their own values rather than blindly accepting someone else's.
I don't even really read a lot. I try and absorb influences from everything that I read. I can find something valuable in the teachings of Jesus Christ or Adolf Hitler or Dr. Seuss. You can find something anywhere. I like to look in unlikely places.
And while critics looked at him as having no clear ethical boundaries,
नॉर्मल लोगों को कुछ समझ ही नहीं आता है भाई। जो सबसे ज़्यादा भैंचोद भाई बेल कर्व वाली चीज़ आजकल मेरे दिमाग में बहुत घूमती रहती है, पता नहीं मैंने 1000 जगह सुन लिया ये बेल कर्व भाई। बेल कर्व में भैंचो जो ऊपर ऐसे होते हैं ना डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन में, बहन के लोड़े जो ये जिनका भैंचोद ऐसे गोल सा होता है ऊपर, वो उनको कुछ समझ नहीं आता भाई। सबसे महाचूतिया लोग होते हैं वो, उनका कुछ होता ही नहीं है भाई। ना उन्हें आर्ट समझ आती है, ना उन्हें बहनचूद कुछ डीप चीज़ें समझ आती है। एकदम नॉर्मल बहनचूद फकिंग NPC लोग भाई। प्रखर गुप्ता की पॉडकास्ट देख ली क्या? प्रखर गुप्ता, अच्छा अमित खान, उसमें भी सुना मैंने, देख ली वो पॉडकास्ट। हाँ उसमें भी वो बेल कर्व के बारे में बात कर रहे थे। 1-2 जगह और सुन लिया मैंने बेल कर्व, पता नहीं कहाँ। ये भैंचो जो मिड लोग होते हैं ना, उनको भैंचो कभी कुछ समझ नहीं आता भाई, कभी कुछ समझ नहीं आता। भैंचो ज़िंदगी में भैंचो चिप्स खाने आए हैं। सबसे ज़्यादा चिप्स ऑर्डर करते हैं भाई वो लोग, मैं बता रहा हूँ तुम्हें। चिप्स खाना उनका सबसे फेवरेट काम होता है कि चिप्स खा लेते हैं। भैंचो चूतिया होते हैं चिप्स, सबसे घटिया चीज़ लगती है मुझे चिप्स दुनिया की।
or guiding principles, young people who felt misunderstood thought he was intelligent and liberated.
And that's part of your whole gig is you're pissed at parents.
I'm pissed, but I'm just trying to, I'm a little bit better of a role model than they think I am. They think I'm a bad guy, and I am to them, but in the scope of things, I think I can give them something better to take into their adult lives than their parents will.
Going into 1995, Marilyn was about to make a few key decisions that would make him one of the most discussed rock stars of the new generation.
Whoa.
First was the lead single of their next project, Sweet Dreams, which was an eerily dark cover of the iconic Eurythmics dance track.
He played with surrealism बहुत ज़्यादा ना, nice, smart man.
This song would go on to become the most iconic and commercially successful track of Manson's career. Additionally, their live shows entered a new level of sadistic, fully leaning into the shock rock genre label he was given. Naked women nailed to crosses, children in cages, and bloody animal parts were all a fixture in every performance. But Manson was also kind of like a method actor in the sense that his antics didn't stop on stage. He once recalled draping a deaf fan in meat and urinating on her at a recording studio. video. In his own words, it was more of a living meat sculpture. The combination of his new popular song and twisted live shows sparked outrage in the conservative media. Instead of ignoring it, Marilyn saw this as an opportunity to have thoughtful discussions with his critics. They likely thought he was some punk degenerate they could dunk on, but instead he was far more articulate than they expected.
Everyone's so afraid of death, I think, that they want to get closer to it by fascinating over things like serial killers and horror movies and car crashes, and that fear of that danger at these concerts. I think that excites people.
So there's erotica then.
कंजर्वेटिव्स की गांड फटती है भाई, पता है, फ्रीडम से गांड फटती है कंजर्वेटिव्स की ना, लिबर्टी से गांड फटती है भाई, क्योंकि लिबर्टी से ऐसे ऐसे लोग पैदा होते हैं भाई. नाउ यू आर फ्री टू बी व्हाटएवर यू वांट भाई. फिर देखो भाई क्या क्या लोग निकलेंगे भाई. सोचो भाई, बहुत सारे मैरिलन मैनसन होते तो पड़ोसी होता तो मैरिलन मैनसन भाई, खीजर भाई, पता नहीं भाई. ठीक है, शायद बैलेंस थोड़े ही होने चाहिए ऐसे लोग, वरना अमीर कैसे होंगे भाई ऐसे लोग, इतने आसानी से लग जाएंगे.
Maybe it's not erotic, but there's a term called eustress, and it's people's euphoric feeling over their stress. Yes. I think people thrive off of that. It's like amusement park, right at your own risk. You know at the concerts there's a hint of danger, and people like that.
Ironically, all this did was help Marilyn get more young people interested in his brand, and this would become the defining cycle of Marilyn Manson's career. He would provoke outrage, insert himself into the resulting debate, and then use the attention to expand his audience.
कम से कम जिंदा होके और भैंजो चीज़ें कर तो रहा है यूएसए में. इंडिया में कोई ऐसा पैदा हो जाए ना और ऐसी हरकतें करने लग जाए, उसको तो अब तक भैंजो फांसी और पता नहीं लाइफ टाइम इम्प्रिजनमेंट कुछ तो कर ही देते भाई. उसका मीडिया पे तो माँ चोद ही देते भाई उसकी, कि इसको जेल में डालो, इसको जेल में डालो जी, बस कर देते भाई. उस तो ख़त्म. शायद यहाँ पे किसी भी थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्री में भैंचोद अगर ये पैदा हो जाता, अच्छी बात है. यूएसए में था भाई, अच्छी बात है यूएसए में था.
Audience, but he took it to a new level in 1996.
यहाँ पे तो इसके भैंचोद न्यूज़ में आ रहा होता है, ये शैतान का पूजा करता है, ये शैतान की पूजा करता है, ब्लैक मैजिक करता है. ऐसी फ़ोटो देख के गांड फट जाती. बस दिखा रहा होता अर्नब गोस्वामी भाई कि ये देखो क्या मतलब है इस चीज़ का, ये ऐसा क्यों किया हुआ है इसने, ये हमारे बच्चों को क्या सिखा रहा है. बहन की चूत भाई.
Where he released their sophomore album, Antichrist Superstar. The record was a concept album satirizing the movie Jesus Christ Superstar, which told the story of an evil supernatural creature who seeks to destroy humanity. The record featured the other extremely popular single from Manson's catalog, The Beautiful People. At the
crazy creativity, bhai.
Time, Antichrist Superstar was being interpreted as a critical piece on the
news बन गई थी, अपने कंसर्ट पे मूत रहा होता था सही में भाई.
Alleged growing fascist tendencies of the American right wing, but critics mostly just interpreted it as him admitting to being a Satan worshipper, which was their biggest fear as someone who had.
जो है भाई, कौन है इंडिया में, कौन है जो ऐसा वाइट और ब्लैक बन के घूमता रहता है यार, चेहरे पे पेंट लगा के, क्या नाम है उसका, नाम भूल गया मैं. उसने यहीं से चुराया भाई ये शायद, या फिर एक WWE का ऑल्टरनेटिव नहीं आता था कुछ, बहनचोद नाम नहीं याद आ रहा मुझे भी उसका, बहनचोद बहुत ख़राब हो चुकी है मेरी मेमोरी. स्टिंग होता था उस कैरेक्टर का नाम, या तो वहाँ से चुराया, नाम नहीं याद आ रहा मुझे कौन सा रैपर है यार वो. तलविंदर है ना शायद, आई थिंक तलविंदर. चेहरे पे पेंट लगा के घूमता है वो हमेशा.
A massive influence on the youth.
So should mums and dads be worried about you?
I think the best thing that could happen is if parents are afraid of me, they will take more time to raise their children to be more intelligent so that they can decide whether or not and how music, art, and film is going to affect their lives.
Antichrist Superstar became a focal point of a broader discussion about the parental advisory labels on albums. Parents were interviewed by news stations to express.
दिमाग लगाया हुआ भाई, मुझे लगता है ना लगा, पता नहीं भाई, बस सरफेस से देख के भी तो चुरा लेते हैं. यहाँ पे इतना डीप घुसने की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती अर्धमान भाई जी. ऊपर से देख के लगता है कि ओके बढ़िया है, कूल है, हम भी कर लेते हैं. आई थिंक इतना सोच लिया होगा शायद बस.
their concern with a minor's ability to purchase any album that had a parental advisory label on it.
That's when Cynthia Johnson got mad, realizing her 13-year-old son had no problem buying Antichrist Superstar by Marilyn Manson.
सुननी पड़ेगी यार ये एल्बम तो बहनचोद बढ़िया नाम नहीं है एंटीक्राइस्ट सुपरस्टार एंटीक्राइस्ट सुपरस्टार व्हाट इफ आई मेक एन एल्बम भाई एंटी अगर मैं यहाँ पे एल्बम बनाऊँ भाई एंटी हिंदू नहीं एंटी राम सुपरस्टार वुड इट सेल लैग हुआ ना चूतिया हो चुका है सब कुछ
Samson. Part of the whole drive to get the parental advisory was to keep these kind of materials out of the hands
Back
of
now.
children. So with the help of 13-year-old Patrick and 14-year-old Niecy, we checked out area record stores. What could they buy? Turned out anything they wanted. At Harmony
Bag,
House
yeah.
I went up and asked to buy this Marilyn Manson CD, and there was no problem.
And looking back, it's actually funny the media didn't realize how this criticism was only giving Marilyn free marketing. I mean, they literally show step by step how children can go into record stores and buy his album regardless of their age. Unfortunately for Manson, speaking and performing directly to the youth of America was about to have unintended consequences. He'd become a victim of the villain persona he created for himself, as he would be accused of influencing countless unexpected deaths, ranging from cult leaders to tragic high school shootings like the one in Columbine, Colorado. In 1997, Raymond Kuntz testified before a...
What the fuck is this name? Kuntz.
Senate music violence hearing, claiming that his 15-year-old son made the permanent decision of death shortly after listening to a Marilyn Manson record. He cited the lyrics, "You can KYS now because you're dead in my mind," as the key influence in his son's decision. And claims like these would fuel others to fear Manson and his music even more. Some organizations like the American Family Association, or AFA, would petition their local governments to cancel his upcoming events. Others would go as far as threatening to bomb the concerts if they went on, strong-arming many venues to cancel their impending Marilyn Manson performances. Manson became so divisive that even listening to his music could get students expelled in a select few schools in Florida. Some describe the performances as satanic rituals riddled with drugs, abuse, and violence. His music was brought in the discussion of two different cult leaders who would go on to commit murder, with both of these murderers allegedly being fans of Marilyn Manson.
Rod Farrell and his followers in the Western Kentucky vampire cult are huge Marilyn Manson fans. The accused murderers have said Marilyn Manson's music touches something dark in them. And then there's Natasha Cornett, the alleged leader of an Eastern Kentucky cult charged with 3 members of a Tennessee family. She's told her lawyer she believes she is the daughter of Satan and that she wants to meet Marilyn Manson.
The media wanted a simple solution to a complicated problem, and Marilyn was extremely comfortable having these hard conversations.
There's an old saying that the devil has always been the church's best friend because he's kept them in business. And I think, like you're saying, they've picked me to be that. But I think, I don't mind the protesting. I just wish that they would get the facts straight, because they think that I do a lot of things. But I'm really about individuality, and that's really the bottom line.
I think you guys have it totally backwards. Were you saying that the church needs people like Marilyn, even the name of his album, Antichrist Superstar. If there was no Christ, he needs Christ to stay in business.
The media constantly tried to bring him down.
January 2020, I know.
The release of the band's third album, Mechanical Animals. It sold over 200,000 copies in its first week of release and debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 200, making it his first #1 album. However, one tragedy would put a screeching halt on his momentum and essentially cause Manson to go into hiding, as the media was hell-bent on blaming him for the tragic school shooting at Columbine High School in 1999. On April 20th, 1999, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold killed 13 students and 1 teacher before taking themselves out of the picture. While attacks like these have become much more common in recent years, at the time this was completely unprecedented. Nobody in the 90s could have ever imagined someone doing something so violent and evil. Before Columbine, schools rarely had security cameras, metal detectors, or law enforcement protocols for such an event. And while the world had a moment of grief for lost lives, the anger among Americans was growing. They demanded answers. Some argued America's gun culture was to blame, specifically the lack of restrictions on purchasing and gifting firearms to families or strangers. Others pointed towards a mental health epidemic that had gone unaddressed. But it didn't take long for various groups in the media to blame movies, television, video games, and music.
What we teach in music, what we teach in movies, and what we teach in video may degrade the value and desensitize us. Value of life, desensitize us to brutality and death.
Since Manson had been on the chopping block for years over similar discussions, he quickly became the perfect scapegoat to dump all of the blame on. Eric Harris's journal was riddled with anti-American and anti-Christian sentiments, which were vaguely similar to Manson's shock rock lyrics about anarchy and taking back control. A survivor of the shooting and fellow classmate also claimed they sang Marilyn Manson songs and joked about people. The press also started comparing the killer's wardrobe to Marilyn's signature style, claiming that they were making an attempt to emulate him. Magazine headlines read, "Worshipped rock freak Manson. Nutters loved evil pop hero." Now, typically, Manson would lean into shock and controversy whenever he saw the opportunity, but even he understood that this was not the time nor the place to do so, offering his own personal comments on the tragedy. It's tragic and disgusting anytime young people's lives are taken in an act of senseless violence, like condolences and their families. He would further discuss his alleged responsibility for the shooting, saying, "The media has unfairly scapegoated the music industry and so-called goth kids and has speculated, with no basis in truth, that artists like myself are in some way to blame. This tragedy was a product of ignorance, hatred, and an access to guns. I hope the media's irresponsible finger-pointing doesn't create more discrimination against kids."
No, यार समझ ही नहीं आती कि हमारे बच्चे ने किसी का मर्डर कर दिया because he watched this movie और कोई सॉन्ग सुन के नहीं यार make sense भाई पता है यार पता नहीं भैंचो दोनों चीज़ें हैं भाई यार हो सकते हैं बच्चे यार बच्चों में कितनी अकल होती है ट्रिगर हो सकता है भाई ट्रिगर हो सकता है सोल कॉज नहीं कह सकते भाई हम इसको कि सोलो कॉज है भाई ये ट्रिगर कह सकते हैं भाई.
The situation had spiraled out of control, and Manson would cancel the remaining shows of his North American tour. Marilyn would fully...
England versus Congo, England बाहर हो रही है भाई शायद. आज इंग्लैंड बाहर हो
discuss his thoughts in an op-ed piece published by the Rolling Stone. We're the people who sit back and tolerate children owning guns, and we're the ones who tune in and watch the up-to-the-minute details of what they do with them. I think it's terrible when anyone dies, especially if it is someone you know and love. But what is more offensive is that when these tragedies happen, most people don't really care any more than they would about the season finale of Friends or Real World. I was dumbfounded as I watched the media snake right in, not missing a teardrop, interviewing the parents of dead children, televising the funerals. Then came with the witch hunt. In his closing statement, he said, "I'm a controversial artist, one who dares to have an opinion and bothers to create music and videos that challenge people's ideas in a world that is watered down and hollow. In my work, I examine the America we live in, and I've always tried to show people that the devil we blame our atrocities on is really just one of us. So don't expect the end of the world to come one day out of the blue. It's been happening every day for a long time." Now, it is almost certain that the events of Columbine were the last thing Marilyn Manson ever wanted. He isolated himself for months, and even considered ending his career prematurely. There was a bit of trepidation in deciding, is it worth it? Are people understanding what I'm trying to say? Am I even going to be allowed to say it? I definitely had every single door shut in my face. There were not a lot of people who stood behind me. Instead, he did what he had always done, and channeled his inner struggle into his music. His fourth record, Hollywood, In the Shadow of the Valley of Death, was released in November of 2000.
बहुत गंदा है यार ये देखना अंचूत.
This is the most important record in my heart, maybe because it came straight after Columbine. It's not my most personal or confessional record, but maybe in some ways it is because I was talking about all the things in my head. It wasn't until 2 years after the tragedy that Marilyn finally decided to speak in depth about Columbine and his influence on the youth. Fox's Bill O'Reilly brought him on the show to challenge him, and Manson politely responded to any question, no matter how tough it was.
If you die and enough people are watching, then you become a martyr. martyr. You become a hero. You become well known. So when you have things like Columbine and you have these kids that are angry and they have something to say and it's listening, the media sends a message that if you do something loud enough and it gets our attention, then you will be famous for it. Those kids ended up on the cover of Time magazine. The media gave them exactly what they wanted, and that's why I never did any interviews when that happened, was getting blamed for it, because I felt that I would be contributing to what I found to be reprehensible.
In a documentary called Bowling for Columbine, Marilyn was able to point the blame back on the media for their involvement in these atrocities.
Do you know that the day that Columbine happened, the United States dropped more bombs on Kosovo than any other time during that war?
I think that that's really ironic, you know, that nobody said, well, maybe the president had an influence on this violent behavior, because that's not the way the media wants to take it and spin and turn it into fear. Because then you're watching television, you're watching the news, you're being pumped full of fear, there's floods, there's AIDS, there's murder. Cut to commercial, buy the Acura, buy the Holgate. If you have bad breath, they're not going to talk to you. You got pimples, the girl's not going to you. And it's just this, it's a campaign of fear and consumption. And that's what I think that it's all based on, is the whole idea that keep everyone afraid and they'll consume.
But what cut through the most was his short and poignant statement at the end about the shooters.
If you were to talk directly to the kids at Columbine and the people in that community, what would you say to them if they were here right now?
I wouldn't say a single word to them. I would listen to what they have to say, and that's what no one did.
Unfortunately, no matter how clear his statements were, the general public still hated Manson for his alleged responsibility for the tragedy. And this was especially messed up considering that the Columbine shooters were not actually fans of Manson's music at all. Over a decade later, he admitted that the media blaming him for this tragedy, as well as countless others, derailed his career and stopped all of his momentum.
Mass shootings?
No, absolutely not.
Do you like guns? Yeah, I do like
Because
guns.
I happen to have a song in The Matrix that just come out, and they're shooting, and I had a video on TV called Rock is Dead. The kids weren't even fans of me. I think they probably thought that I was too much of a sissy because I was wearing lipstick. I don't really know. I don't know what's going on with them.
Well, you must have got a bad rap from that.
Yeah, it kind of put my whole career on hold. A lot of people don't know about it because I had to really take an active stance legally against a lot of news places for using Marilyn Manson, which is trademarked.
Interestingly enough, there was a separate German band called KMFDM that the shooters were much bigger fans of, and the date of the shooting coincided with the release of their 10th album.
सारा blame इस पे डाल दिया just cause
it
he's
would be a
famous
stretch
ना
to place
for
any
real भाई
responsibility on either of these musical
scapegoat हर
projects,
चीज
but
के
even
ना
if
हर चीज के लिए ना ये पूरे सिस्टम को ना हर चीज के लिए एक स्केपगोट चाहिए होता ताकि भैंचो सिस्टम पे ना भैंचो उंगली उठ जाए सिस्टम अपने आप को बचाने के लिए भैंचो किसी ना किसी को स्केपगोट बनाता ही है भाई अपनी भैंचो चीज़ें पे कोई फिक्स नहीं करना किसी को कुछ भैंचो स्केपगोट ढूंढो कौन होगा भैंचो Crazy.
You could, KMFDM would be the target. The problem was that this band was far less famous than Marilyn Manson, and they also didn't embrace Satanism or have a tantalizing image. Marilyn was already a scapegoat far before the shooting and was much more recognizable to the public. They didn't blame him because he was responsible, they blamed him because it was easy. However, the other thing that was working against Marilyn Manson was time. He continued to tour and diversify his brand in the early 2000s, but his relevance as a cultural supervillain and chart-topping artist faded away as the years went on. The satanic panic of the 20th century was mostly forgotten, rock was slipping away from the mainstream with hip-hop dominating the charts, and the underground art world had transformed drastically during the 2000s as the internet became more accessible. There was a time when shock value had to be delivered to the audience on a platter via radio, TV, or music, but now anyone who wanted to be provoked or disgusted could simply Google it. I'm sure you've noticed that a lot of this video is heavily censored because of YouTube's strict policies. I can't show anything they deem as too graphic, and I can't say banned words even though they can sometimes be crucial for educational purposes. So I've officially decided from this video and forward, I will be uploading uncensored and completely cultural powerhouse he once was. But it only got worse. In the late 2010s, his history both on and off stage was being interpreted in a different light. The irreverent rock star persona was becoming less sexy and considered more problematic to a changing cultural landscape. And when actually
अबे जवान था तब सेक्सी लगता था बुड्ढा हो गया भैंचो कह रहा है ये तो क्रेजी बुड्ढा है शायद बस what the fuck
less sexy and considered more problematic to a changing cultural landscape. And when actress Evan Rachel Wood and over a dozen other women came out with allegations of sexual abuse against Manson, he'd be forced to break many of the illusions that made him famous just to try to keep himself out of prison. In 2016, actress Evan Rachel Wood revealed to Rolling Stone that she had been assaulted by an ex-partner. 2 years later, she testified before Congress as an advocate for the legislator to protect the rights of sexual assault survivors.
My name is Evan Rachel Wood, and I'm an artist. I am also a domestic violence and sexual assault survivor and the single mother of a young boy. When I was 5 years old, I started working in film, and every day since then I worked to reach the very privileged place I'm aware that I occupy. And I'm here today to use my position as an artist, survivor, mother, and advocate to bring a human voice to the population of 25 million survivors in the U.S. who are currently experiencing inequality under the law and who desperately need basic civil rights. I struggle to speak to you today because I'm not sure what words are appropriate when discussing this issue. However, if you can't hear the whole truth, you will never know true empathy, and I believe in the saying, if we have to live through it, then you should have to hear it.
Throughout the statement to Congress, Wood described a relationship where she was stripped of her agency, was brainwashed, and was frequently abused. She refused to disclose the identity of the man at the time, but that would change in 2021 when Wood said in an Instagram post, "The name of my abuser is Brian Warner, also known to the world as Marilyn Manson. He started grooming me when I was a teenager and horrifically abused me for years. I was brainwashed and manipulated into submission. I am done living in fear of retaliation, slander, or blackmail." Evan was also working on a documentary to be played at the Sundance Film Festival called Phoenix Rising. The doc was created by Wood, her mother, and her on and off girlfriend Ilma Gore. The goal of the documentary was to not only tell her and other survivor stories, but also document her transition to becoming an activist, specifically launching the Phoenix Act, where Evan and her team hopes to create a bill that passes in California and the rest of the USA to bring more rights to survivors of domestic violence. By the early 2000s, Evan Rachel Wood was one of Hollywood's most promising young actresses. She wasn't a household name yet, but after earning critical acclaim as a teenager in 13, many believed she was only one big role away from becoming a major star. Her public relationship with Marilyn was so shocking at the time because she was a 19-year-old with a bright future, and he was a 36-year-old on the tail end of his relevance. She claims from day one of their relationship, things were very wrong.
I was a young teenage girl who idolized the music industry, and then the first night, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. This was not what I thought it was going to be at all. And then when I started to see it sort of crumble, and when he started hurting me, and when I was really in such denial and in too much shame to admit to myself that maybe I went down the wrong path.
The vast majority of her allegations describe emotional manipulation. However, the most scathing accusation is that he R-worded her on the set of a music video. Marilyn's song Heart-Shaped Glasses was inspired by his relationship with Evan Rachel Wood and the novel Lolita, a book centered around an older man's unhealthy and predatory obsession with a 12-year-old girl.
I wrote the song after a day when Evan came up to me and she was wearing the Lolita glasses, heart-shaped sunglasses, as a bit of a joke because people obviously will think because she's younger than me that there's a bit of a Lolita relationship there. And we thought that was very amusing to us, and she has the same sense of humor as me, so she wore those glasses, and immediately that day when I saw her wearing those, the first thing I said to her was, "If you break my heart, I'll break your glasses." And I meant it in an almost violent way, but also in a romantic way.
Evan starred in the music video in 2007. She wore the heart-shaped glasses, and her character is a little girl who is too young and innocent to be at a hardcore rock show. However, she quickly becomes obsessed with Marilyn, and they end up having intercourse covered in blood. She claims they never discussed the scene before it happened, and that the sex was not simulated. It was real. However, it was not consensual.
Normally when you do an explicit scene, it's talked about before. That just didn't exist because this wasn't the plan. It wasn't until the cameras were rolling, my clothes started being pulled off me when things started happening. Very specifically having the thought, wait, this isn't a dream. This is really happening.
And this was just the start of a wave of other accusations. She also alleges to have been isolated from her friends and family, as well as put under constant surveillance by Manson. He's hacked into my computer and social media accounts. He was monitoring my every move. I couldn't reach out to anybody to say, I need help, because if he caught me doing that, it would be up for 2 days getting yelled at, pleading my case, trying to talk him off the ledge. He just knew how to break you down. Looking at Manson's own words from a 2009 interview, he admits to extremely manipulative behavior. And every time I called her that day, I called 158 times. I took a razor blade. Experience PTSD listening to her, and that is how we know how real it is. You could never truly understand unless it's happened to you. However, others were suspicious of the credibility of her stories. It's sick how people can publicly accuse someone of something so heinous while repeatedly showing their picture all throughout the show, and blatantly condemning them based off one party's word of mouth, all without a fair trial, not waiting until both parties have had their day in court first. Marilyn's cult-like fan base immediately rushed to his defense, trying to find any evidence that made Evan look like she was lying. She specifically stated that Manson left her brainwashed and manipulated into submission, but others assumed she was a fully aware adult in a consensual relationship, but just embarrassed and ashamed of her behavior afterwards, like when she dressed up with what many people interpret to be a Nazi alongside Marilyn, also doing photo shoots that appear to be inspired by Nazi attire, and allegedly throwing up a Nazi salute multiple times on the side stage of one of his concerts. So I guess he forced her to do that too? Wow, Marilyn Manson is a powerful man. But Wood's case got much stronger when multiple other women spoke out about their experience with the controversial rock star. Among the most notable names were Ashley Walters, Sarah McNeely, and famously Ashley Morgan Smithline, who broke down some of the tactics that Manson allegedly used to control her mind.
First couple nights we hung out, I was allowed to sleep and he slept. And it was little things that, like, you know, we were shooting and all of the windows were blacked out, so he would lie to me about what time it was and tell me, oh, it's only midnight, and it was, you know, maybe 6 in the morning and it was late outside. And it's just the lies got more and more. What I've read about getting someone into a cult is you deprive them of food, you deprive them of sleep, and you deprive them of talking to anyone. All those things were true. Like, if I would fall asleep at 1 in the morning, he would start playing really loud music and wake me up, and then I had to go do a line of cocaine to wake up and keep partying with him and entertain him.
And although these should be taken seriously, much of the focus was on the physical and sexual abuse. Ashley claimed that the R words became too frequent for her to count.
It was from 2010 to 2012. I can't, between 20 and 300. I don't know. It just got more and more violent as time went on. He would like my ribs. He didn't hit my face. You know, I was a model as a job. He didn't hit my face. He definitely, my inside of my thighs, my inside of my elbows, my outer thighs have his initials into them. He cut my lower stomach, and he made it very clear that I was replaceable, vulnerable, that I was extinguishable, that he could me at any moment, and he would remind me when I was tied up or when I was whatever that I could you at any time.
Many of these women were also featured in the Phoenix Rising documentary, which indicated that they had sort of banded together to take down this alleged monster. The allegations were piling up, and Manson could not stay silent. He responded to the claim saying, "Obviously, my art and my life have long been magnets for controversy, but these recent claims about me are horrible distortions of reality. My intimate relationships have always been entirely consensual with like-minded partners. Regardless of how and why, others are choosing to misrepresent the past. That is the truth." But it's not hard to see why some people might think there is truth to his art when he explicitly said one of his most violent and disturbing songs was about Evan Rachel Wood. But that damage is part of it, and the song "I Want to Kill You Like They Do in the Movies" is about my fantasies. I have fantasies every day about smashing her skull with a sledgehammer. However, women would continue to come out and describe the alleged abuse they suffered at the hands of Manson. Upwards of 16 different women made very similar allegations. He would deprive them of sleep and food and supply them with illicit substances. Nearly all of them claimed to have some sort of PTSD from his actions. One even claimed that Manson pulled a gun on her. There were also allegations of whipping, beating, and other physical harm that coupled with photos of bruises and
God damn, bhai, you're a crazy motherfucker. दिमाग खराब कर दिया यार इसने तो मेरा. Oh no. Oh no, what the fuck was he doing, bhai? What the fuck was he doing, bhai? What the fuck was he doing? Shit. जेल में डालो सालों को. हो गया आज की स्ट्रीम का, इतनी है आज की स्ट्रीम. माँ चुद गई भाई दिमाग की, माँ चुद गई दिमाग की बहन चूत. Bye bye.